Jenny, how did you know that Jason was someone worth your time?
Chad, I was 18. I was doing the best I could with what I had at 18 years old.
Boy, our first year was hard.
I remember coming to you and saying, we need to get into counseling.
Why is it a bad thing to engage with conflict?
This is very hard to explain to couples. It's very normal at 10 years into a marriage for it really to hit the fan.
What's something that stressed you guys out?
There's many to choose from, Chad. We can start big and we can go little.
Tell me about the beauty of your marriage.
I can truly say this from the bottom of my heart. My most favorite person to be with is Jason, and I'm not just making that up.
I don't blame you.
Guys, he is so humble. He is so humble.
Welcome to the Live Change Podcast. Today we have a really special episode where we're talking about marriage, but we're not going to just talk about the easy stuff. We're actually going to get into the nitty gritty, and we're going to learn from real examples by talking to a couple that's been happily married for over 22 years. You know them. It's Jason and his lovely wife, Jenny Mitchell. Jenny's joining us on the Live Change Podcast today, and we're really excited, but we're going to hear their story and let them kind of tell us about what they've had to navigate in their 22 years of marriage, and we're going to learn a lot about how we can apply that to our own marriages and our own relationships. So welcome to the podcast, Jenny Mitchell.
Oh, it's so good to be here. I love podcasts and my first one, so I'm thrilled.
Now, your first one being on.
First one being on. I've listened to
Many.
hundreds. Yes, hundreds.
Thousands, hundreds of thousands.
Although I have to say, as you introduced us, you said over 22 years, because we were just discussing whether it was 22 or 23. I said 22. Jason said 23.
Well, it has an answer.
Well, he said over 22, so he just landed in the middle, so I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah.
See,
That's
yeah, because Jason is, so you're one of those people that says like,
I'm already living there.
yeah, totally.
August 4th. I'm already there. And
So do you do that with your age too? Like I'm 50.
Yeah. Oh, no. No. Yes. I'm close to 60. No, I don't do that with that.
Just with marriage. I wonder why. Why do you do that with just the marriage?
Because it gives me a range. It gives me...
He's just rounding up.
Are you just unwilling to do the math that quick?
Yeah,
Pretty
exactly. Well, it's funny because you're like, yeah, it's like, it is something you can know. You can truly know how long you've been married.
Well, and this is part of what we know about each other is I am very detailed
Oh,
and
my
specific, and he is very open-ended. So, I mean, this is where I like that you just were the peaceful
yeah.
middle.
Yeah. Like if you're like, what's the temp? If you were to ask me like, what's the temp at today? I'd say, it's 70 out. Jenny'd be like 73. It's 73. I always pick on Jenny. Like if she were to live when Jesus was here and he started and been like, hey, there was a man who had a son and his son wanted the inheritance. Be like, that's not true. That didn't happen. This is made up. He's like,
Stop.
I know it's a parable, Mrs. Mitchell. It's a parable. Yeah, but
Realist. She's a realist.
I am. Yeah. I mean, you can't have you've got to have facts. You just can't have open-ended things.
So you guys have been together for 22 years, but it all started, you guys met somewhere. So tell for those of us who don't know the story, just tell us where you guys met.
yeah, college. We were married.
Tacoma Falls College, small Bible college in Georgia.
Okay, Tacoma Falls. How did what was the situation there?
Well,
Not a lot.
Like
I was a mess at that period of my life, and I moved there. I transferred. I was going to the University of Louisville for the first 2 years, and then and my life was a wreck. I was far from God, and in light of, and I won't get into all that, but in light of kind of really choosing Jesus, to follow Jesus for the first time, like all in, one of the things I felt like I needed to do was kind of evaluate my circumstances or my environment. And I had no one who was remotely interested in walking the same way that I was. So I felt like I needed a transfer. So I transferred colleges, went to a Christian college down in Georgia that I'd known about, Tacoma Falls College. First night on campus, I saw Jenny at the basketball game. I went to the basketball game. They were playing something, and Jenny was there, and I saw her and thought, I should get to know her.
The rest is history.
I was there for 4 hours on campus.
History. Yeah, and that's how that worked. Yeah.
as most stories, I think if men are honest, most stories, I saw a pretty girl and I wanted to get to know her.
Yeah.
Exactly. Would that have worked if he was blind? Maybe not. No, just kidding. I'm kidding.
I just got a vibe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. I had a feeling.
So you met at Tacoma Falls. Who asked who out first?
Oh, most definitely you. I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
I think there was a time he didn't even know if I liked him because I was
Oh,
so
yeah,
guarded
that's true
with
too.
my emotions and
It was so weird. Like the first 4 months, we would go out on dates. Like we'd go to the movies, for instance, and then the next day I'd see her on campus, and it was like, "What's your name again?" Like,
okay, no, that's an extreme.
oh, we just spent all day yesterday together, going through the beautiful Georgia mountains, and she would walk by me in the cafeteria or whatever, and literally not look. And I was like, "Oh, hey, Jen." Oh,
I'm not going to play all my cards at once. I mean, you have to
was-
to be guarded a little
yeah.
bit. And
That
we
is
weren't
brilliant.
we weren't actually dating. We were going on dates. That's totally different.
yeah. Well, that's
Okay,
fine.
okay. To define that for me. So, everyone listening here, let's settle it now. In your opinion, what's the difference between dating and going on dates?
Well, you're not in a committed relationship, is what I would say.
Intention. Yeah. I mean, but there was a point, like the intention, right? Like I guess we were going on dates. I'm not sure we were like the intention wasn't to be exclusive with each other.
Yes.
Probably
Gotcha.
that came a bit later, but
Once we got
but
to
it's
know
still
each other.
confusing to have spent a day together and then not be looked at the next day.
So you were dating for a little while, and then eventually Jason got up the courage to define the relationship.
Well, yeah, actually, yes. I remember when that was. It was Easter. So I moved in January, right down there. That's when I met her. We went on dates, and then the next day I was ignored, and then we'd go on another date, and then ignored. But anyways, all that kind of happened, and then Easter. So what was that, 3 months later, whatever? We were talking, and we both were making plans at that point about what to do for the summer.
Gotcha.
And she was going to be working at a camp. You were going to be working at a camp. I was going to be going to Florida. She was going to stay in Georgia. We were both working at camps. And the bottom line is we weren't going to see each other. And so we knew that we were liking each other a lot. Actually, I remember saying to you, "I like you."
It was
a
so
lot.
elementary.
Did you say it like Forrest Gump?
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
I like a lot.
Wait, that's Dumb and Dumber.
So, how do you know you got the right person? So my question is, so like you guys dated for a while, but you were going through some tough stuff, and so like how did you know that this person was dateable? I mean, because Jenny, for you, like how did you know that Jason
That's a great
was
question.
someone worth your time? Because here he is, a guy that self-described going through some stuff.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I did not think I would marry anyone from the college that we were at just because I had seen that happen. And so I think I wanted to go against the grain. So that's probably why I was putting that out there with Jason. But then as far as knowing whether or not someone is worthy of marriage, that's what I mean by dating. Like we're dating, we're not in a committed relationship. I'm trying to see and take in information about whether or not I could even enter into a committed relationship. Because when I enter in that means in the back of my head that there's probability that we could move towards marriage.
Gotcha. So it's an interview for you. Dating is an interview.
Yes, in that time. But then again, Chad, I was 18. So, I mean, I was doing the best I could with what I had at 18 years old.
Well, I think you're doing much better than a lot of 18-year-olds. The fact that you even had that plan.
What were some of the things that you were looking for then? I mean, like what were some of the things that would have been obvious? This isn't, I don't want to even go on another date or whatever.
Mhm. I think, honestly, of course, the top for me was, how was your relationship with Christ?
Mhm.
Are you following him? And not just words, but
Mhm.
actions. I think also your character. Are you loyal, honorable, trustworthy? I think watching how you interacted with other people. And then just maybe a little bit more shallow stuff is, I like someone that could make me laugh
Yeah,
and
chemistry.
could be goofy and
Yeah.
silly. And because I'm a pretty goofy, silly person, that's gonna, I mean, this is maybe saying, yeah, we would sword fight with each other. We get literal like pieces of trees and shape them into a sword and fight. I mean, these are the things we were doing in the middle of nowhere in Toccoa,
Wow.
Georgia. So
Not a
he
lot
engage-
going on in Toccoa,
Going
Georgia.
on. So we had to come up with our own fun. So yeah, so those were partly some of the traits. And then I think once I got to see also how he was engaging with his family, I think that tells a
awesome.
lot, because that's
Mhm.
people that have known him his whole life. And is he respecting them? Is he honoring them? Not perfect by any means, but just kind of testing the waters with that.
So I kind of see three things that you were looking for. First was the seriousness of faith.
Yes.
You were looking for chemistry, like, do I enjoy this person and will I
Mhm.
enjoy them long term?
Right.
And the third is, how do they interact with relationships and others?
Yes.
Those are good. That's It's good litmus.
That's a pretty good. Hey, there's a preaching list right there. Christ, chemistry, and character.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think all of those,
The 3 C's, yes.
the 3 C's are seen. They bake, so to speak, with time. And what happens is so often, because we love the feeling of being liked, that we short circuits the time sometimes to see those things really evolve in someone's life. And I always tell my kids this. We tell our kids, or I tell my kids this. You might, I think you do probably too. But I was like, believe people when they tell you who they are.
Mm.
So when someone in other words, when you observe the character in someone, what happens is we want to tell ourselves for lots of different reasons, that they're different than who they're telling us they are at the moment. You know what I mean? And so we stay in a relationship, we stay with a boyfriend, even though it's like we see things. He's kind of a jerk to people, but we rationalize it.
Yep.
And, or, she's really kind of rude to, her mom or whatever it might be. Right. I'm trying to think of simple
examples.
Really
negative.
She's really critical all the time.
Yeah.
And we rationalize them. And it's like, just believe who they're telling you to be. You can make a wise decision, but is that what you want to be or who you want to be with? What happens is I just think sometimes we put the desire to be needed, I guess, or known, or we put the desire to be
or
liked.
that you don't, liked, or you don't want to be alone. And I think also there's the, you're saying kind of the negative, but there's can be times where you might really, everything checks the box. They're a good person. They're a Christian. Those are all really great things, but there may be something in your gut that just says, this just doesn't feel right. And you have to listen to that too, because I think sometimes we have this idea of what someone should be, but there also has to be a leaning towards prayerfully, I think, is this the relationship I'm supposed to be in, even if it checks all the boxes?
Talk to the young women who are single or dating right now, Jenny, who, because I'm not trying to, I do think I find this more in young women than young men. It happens with young men too, but I think I find myself in conversation with young women more where they're dating or in a relationship with someone who does not align faith-wise. Why is that important? Why is that? It was obviously important to you. Why should it be important? What's the risk? What's the reward? I mean, all that kind of stuff.
I mean, I can only speak from my own experience. So I haven't necessarily been in a relationship with someone that didn't align to me with my faith. But for me, why it was important, because it's almost like you're speaking another language when someone doesn't have the same faith, or they're running towards the same goal as you, which to me kind of threads through every part of my relationship. My faith does, my centeredness on Christ. Now, I do want to say that there are some people that they may be in a relationship that this person isn't a believer and they're already married to them, and they then become, come into the faith. That's completely different to me. Because
Paul talks about that in his letter to the Corinthians.
Yeah. Yep. So you're talking more people that are single than
I'm talking about dating.
Dating. Yeah. So I think that's going to change the trajectory of where you're going to go. So do you want to constantly be not dragging, but pulling someone along? Or do you want someone that's going to be equal with you and even going to challenge you in your faith?
Totally.
So,
well, that's the whole idea when Paul says to be equally yoked.
Right.
The idea of being two oxen or donkeys who are, a yoke was like a tie between them when they would plow fields. And if one is stronger than the other, like the other's weaker, let's say, or bigger, let's say, and the other one's just as a way of metaphor, it will begin to pull, you'll begin to pull apart, and it'll create resistance. You won't be able to move forward together. And I think that's the idea. But I see a lot of young people almost rationalizing a little bit, like say, yeah, but they're good people and all, and I don't doubt that. But there will come a point. At some point, you're going to have to make a decision. If this continues to go down the road of marriage, or you get more serious, how do you spend your money? How do you spend your time? How do you raise your children? And it's going to become a point of conflict at some point, because your values, the closer you grow with Jesus, will begin to pull you a different direction.
Sure.
And you don't want to believe that because you like them and whatever.
And I think a lot of people, there's the Beauty and the Beast complex, which I really think it has a pervasiveness in young couples, especially young women, where they think, oh, he is a prince underneath this beast, and I can unlock that. But I think in reality, sometimes the beast is a beast.
Yeah.
Like that, like underneath him, more beast.
Or he's a prince underneath there. That's not your job, though.
Yeah, and I would
That's
say
God's
marriage is not your mission field.
That's the worst reason to get married
Worst.
or to continue on.
Yeah, because I mean, I think you guys are hitting the nail on the head with that, because it could be someone that fully supports your faith, that fully supports where you're going. And that sounds really good. Like, yes, go to church, go to your Bible studies, do your thing. But then if they're not engaging with that on their own personal self, then what's going to happen, to your point, Jason, later down the road when, let's say, you have children? And from my experience, because we've both had the same faith, it does take some of the weight off of how we are raising our children, that I'm not the one that is constantly having to pull them to church or read the Bible with them, that there's an equalness there, which is going back to the word you were saying, equally yoked.
And I realize that there's people listening to this who are married, and maybe you came to Christ later and your husband or your wife has not. So that's a different thing. Paul talks about staying faithful in the marriage and saying God can redeem that. So that's a whole different thing. Well, I'm talking about early on, when you have the choice, you have agency over, and this is why the Bible talks about that, and why that was really my first priority when looking, even with you, Jenny, was I want to see. I don't want to just hear about your relationship with Jesus. I want to see the way it lives itself out. I want to hear. I mean, honestly, I want to pray together. I want to hear the prayers you pray. I want to hear that. It's not judge, but it kind of like, that's kind of silly to go, well, I don't want to be judgy. It's like, are you talking about marrying someone? You should probably be judgy. Like, it's so stupid to think like you should have a high filter. You know what I mean? Like
I genuinely, Steph and I do premarital mentoring, and we've met lots and lots of married or couples getting married. Here's what I find, just doing ministry all these years. Some people put more time investigating what kind of car they're going to buy than the people they're going to marry.
Good point.
They literally are like, well, I don't know if what's the fuel, mileage, on this and stuff. But they marry the person, willy nilly. It's way more important to be serious about that. And I love what you said, Jenny. And I love this idea of, Christ, chemistry, and character. And this idea of chemistry is important. Just because they love Jesus doesn't mean they're right for you.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
That's why all three need to be.
Because if you're not having a good time, but they love Jesus, that doesn't matter.
No.
That doesn't matter. It's probably not who God has for you. And chemistry is so important because it's not there. You need to be excited to see the person. We've had the sword fights at
17.
Tekoa, and you are get married, and you have all these expectations of what marriage is going to be like.
Boy, our first year was hard.
Yeah, I would say that was one of our hardest. And it's funny you say we had all these expectations, but I don't think that they were cognitive. I think they were so subtle. At least for me, it was. It was very subtle of what marriage is going to look like. I mean, I think.
What did you think it was going to look like?
I thought it was going to be easy.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I was 20, guys. So.
Okay. We all thought that.
Yeah.
At 20 years old, you think a lot of things are going to be easy.
That's true.
Yeah.
How so?
I think, well.
Like you knew there was going to be challenges.
Yes, but I think some of our own things we had not had a chance to work through as a 20-year-old got brought into the marriage. I think also, there was this idea for me, because of my family of origin, that if we did not have conflict or fight, that was going to be a successful relationship or marriage. And Jason and I, in our dating and engaged relationship, we really did not have a lot of conflict. And I think some of that was being avoidant for me. I avoided some things.
We had conflict.
Yes.
We didn't engage.
No, we did not engage, which I do not like conflict. And so I've had to learn how to engage in a healthy way through that.
But why is it unhealthy? Why is it a bad thing to engage with conflict, Jenny? Because why is it a bad thing to
avoid
not
it?
To avoid conflict?
Engage in conflict?
I think because it's going to build up. Like one of my counselors one time told me that I am like a beach ball. So you take a beach ball and you push it down into the water. And when you let it go, what's going to happen? That's going to spew up so much water onto those that are surrounding you.
Interesting.
And so that's what I found was happening. The longer we were married, the more that beach ball would be pushed down, because there would just be little things that I didn't have the maturity or understanding how it was affecting me. And so I avoided. It's easy to avoid, but that served me well when I was younger. But as you get older and you get into a married relationship, that's not going to serve you well. So that was, for me, that was something I had to work through. I did not know that. I mean, that took me probably 5-7 years into our marriage
until 10 years in that
to really understand some of that stuff.
Whoa. So like, hold on, 10 years, you were still working.
Well, we at that point had been engaged in conflict by that point, but I think some of the awareness.
I'm just saying that's a testament to the fact that you hadn't arrived.
Yeah, we still haven't arrived.
I just talked to someone the other day about this, and they're in their mid-30s, and they were just talking about kind of recently just going, I'm tired of dealing with this thing, and I'm going to go figure this out, this recurring thing. I don't. It's very hard to see that when you're 2-3 years into your marriage, or in your mid-20s, right? There's something about staying with it long enough. You will like this is very hard to explain to couples, but it's very normal at 10 years into a marriage for it really to hit the fan. 10, 12 years in. Couple reasons. Usually by that point you have kids, so the dynamics of your relationship have changed. By that point, you know the patterns, and they're recurring, and most people have a choice around that time about what you're going to do. And some people we'll figure out how to live with this now. Yeah. And other people choose, we're going to, like the person I was talking about a moment ago, I'm going to figure this out. I've got to, I'll live with it. Yeah. We will learn to live with it. And that's what happens. You guys all know couples. We all know couples where they're just, you become partners, or you become roommates at that point, usually. Or we're going to dig into this. The digging in, though, is extraordinarily painful, because the patterns are coming from deep places, and that's usually a pivot point, and kind of what are we going to do? So that's that 10 years in for us of what you were saying, why do I keep avoiding it? Why do I keep feeling shame over these things? Why do I keep, so it just went to a different layer at that point. But I'm trying to say, I don't think we could have done that the first 2-3 years. You don't know enough. Yeah. You've got to kind of, you're
still working on it. So it's not that you're laying a foundation. I think marriage is always you're laying a new foundation, a new flooring that will build up so that as time goes on, that you can go to that deeper level. You can go to the deeper level.
What are the benefits of conflict, though, other than just getting it out? Why should a couple be okay with conflict? Because there is a scary thing, especially for young couples listening. I don't like fighting. People don't want to fight, and they think that that's a sign of damage. They think that's a sign that the relationship is weakening and hurting. Mm-hmm. Could you challenge that for me?
Absolutely. I actually feel like,
yeah, because he has challenged me through the years on it, and I've needed it. Yeah, I've definitely needed it. He can speak well into this.
There's a reframing that needs to happen. Fighting is not a sense of.
That's a good way.
Fighting is not a indication of negativity. Fighting actually is an indicator of aliveness, of hope, because you don't fight for anything. Think about this. There's nothing in your life that you fight for that you don't believe in. So, I'm not out in the streets right now fighting for a Dunkin' Donuts. I want a Dunkin' Donuts in Mannheim. I'm thinking about what's the dumbest example, right? Yeah. Because I don't care, but I'm fighting with Jenny because now there's healthy and unhealthy ways of doing it. So again, now that's a different conversation.
Yeah, because that word sometimes for some people fighting can seem negative, but this is more you're
you have
saying,
all your filters. And, I'm talking about the idea of conflict. The other thing is avoiding conflict is just not honest. So you don't have a real relationship in a sense, because if I feel something from Jenny and I don't talk about it, but I feel it and I allow that beach ball thing I just keep pushing down, I'm not being honest. Yeah. So it's kind of fake. And this is what I was trying to say earlier. You were like, we didn't have conflict. I was like, well, we did have conflict. We just weren't addressing it.
Exactly. Yes.
And I think that some relationships have conflict, don't realize it, and then they feel their spouse has changed when the conflict finally comes.
Yeah.
You're not who I married. Who I married is always happy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is always agreeable. And it's now all of a sudden it's you've just bait and switched me. But it's no. I'm being authentic now. Mm. And sometimes that's really hard for a marriage, because all of a sudden it's you've changed. You said it was great that I go hunting every night.
Yeah.
You
What?
you said it was
yeah.
you said it was great that I stay out with my buddies, and go to a concert and go away all weekend. You said that it was all okay, and now you're changing it.
Mm-hmm. Well, you want to talk to that?
It's funny you said the word happy because I can remember when our first dates and Jason asked me, what's the one word you would use to describe yourself? I don't know if you remember this, Jason. And I said happy because I assumed, yes, I am I would say a happy individual, but that wasn't, that's not what I should be achieving to be at all times and all moments. And I think in marriage, we assume that our marriages need to always be perfect, or I'm going off track here,
No,
or
fine.
need to be in a certain emotional state. That's not reality. We are not always going to be in a certain emotional state. God designed us to have all kinds of emotions, and those emotions need to be ride with us. They don't need to drive. And what you're getting at is when someone is married for a while or just married, and you're learning more about yourself and learning what impacts you, then you might discover that, oh, those things that I said earlier, they don't hold up now because I'm learning more about myself. So that means I'm changing, and I need to be willing to voice that where, like you said, it's being truthful and honest, not only to yourself, but to the other person, which is respect. But then it's how are you going to engage that conversation? Because there's totally different ways to do that. If your spouse is doing things that you had said you were okay with, are you going to become passive aggressive? Are you going to become avoidant and ice them out?
So how's that worked out for us? How has that played out for us?
I think for us, there's roles that we tended to, or can still tend to lean into that we had carried through from when we were younger. And so for me personally, I can only speak to me. One of them was avoidant. One of them was to be a peacemaker. And then when that didn't work and I did not get a response, then I would become probably more of a nag, a straight up nag. I'll admit that because I wanted some sort of a response from him, and I wasn't getting doing it from the avoidant or the peacemaker.
Right.
And no, those are not correct either.
Right.
Well, undealt with conflict will come out, and it came out as nagging.
Yeah.
Yes.
It came out as a conflict avoidance. It came out in
this is
probably sarcasm and.
This is the crazy cycle for us is
crazy cycle.
So she wouldn't get a response from me, and so she would nag to try to get something. The more she did that, I would retreat more because I felt vulnerable, and I don't want to give her the privilege of knowing that she can affect my emotions. Mm-hmm. So I'll back off, and I'll go silent, and I'll get real quiet, or I'll just pull away. Well, what does she do when she's not getting? She'll nag more or whatever, right? Or get more animated, whatever. And I can let you know it's stupid, but like when you're in the middle of it, your emotions and all that are taken over from any rational. Like here, right now, we can be like, how dumb is that? But
totally.
But when you're in the middle of it, you don't see all that because you're just reacting very primally, like from your flesh, really. But that's kind of what's driving you. So you would. Well, yeah. So I don't know. Are there examples of?
I think I can think of probably quite a few examples I can think of, but there's one from when it's probably maybe 12 years ago, and we were. I guess this was not long after we had our second, and it was a very tense season, and I was picking up that you were pulling away. And instead of saying that, there again, I didn't even know necessarily what I was feeling. So like you were saying, I would react primally. Instead of responding, I would react. And I felt like I felt alone, honestly. I felt very alone in that season. And my way of dealing with that, instead of reflecting on my emotions, what I was feeling, and being curious, I became a nag. And there were many instances during those first months that I would nag you about something, or
first months
of after we had our second child. Oh, yeah. And I can remember one time we had to go and help someone else in their yard, and we were picking up limbs. And already I'm a pretty precise, like very detailed thing. So if I'm going to pick up the limbs, I'm going to pick up all those limbs. And that wasn't occurring. And so I completely nagged you. I was just like pointing out all the things that you had not done. And that didn't, I just remember your response.
Which taps in on a core shame issue for me, which is you're a failure.
Mm.
So
it added
now we're
to
like,
it.
now we're
It
like,
added to
yeah,
it.
exactly. Like,
Yeah. And so then we didn't discuss that. We didn't talk about it, but you could slice the tension there.
So, Jenny, I think that a lot of people are in your boat right now. Okay,
Yes.
so they have all the emotions they're feeling and they want to process, and they have a husband that is not engaging.
Yes.
He's pulling back, and they are frantically trying to engage with them, and it's not working. I'm not saying that you have the perfect answer. There is no magic bullet,
There's
but what did you do to see your way through that season of conflict and that season of growth?
Yeah, I can only speak to that moment
Totally.
in season and time. But for us, I remember coming to you, and this was in our second home, and saying, we need to get into counseling. Like, we both knew
We
it.
needed
He
outside
felt
help.
that. Like, we knew that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and we had been in counseling before, but I knew that it was something that
how
I
do you
couldn't get a
know?
handle on it. I just couldn't get a
Okay.
handle on it. It felt like it was bigger than myself.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
I was responding to about picking up limbs. It should not equate to the emotions I was having. And that was happening over and over again. And that's a sign.
The
That was
pattern.
a sign.
I think the pattern's
of,
a sign.
Yeah.
You said something earlier too. You said, and I want to really highlight to this. You said emotions need to be the passenger, not the driver. They can be
Yes.
in the car with you, but they can't be the driver. And in this season, it sounds like the emotions were becoming the driver.
Oh, the emotions were completely the driver for me at that time.
That's a warning sign.
That is, for me, a warning sign, big time. And I tend to want to avoid emotions. I want to be happy. I want to be everything's okay. And when other emotions are coming in, that affects me. And I would let that drive instead of realizing the work I've done through the years and I'm still doing is there's no bad emotion. Every emotion is good. It's just how am I going to respond to them? What am I going to do to help lead us through this? And giving myself grace to say, no, this makes me, and voicing it in a way that's really healthy is saying, I feel alone. I feel neglected. And that's vulnerable too for me to say, I need you. That really comes down to, I need you.
Yeah.
And that's not easy for me to say, maybe for a
Okay.
lot of people.
That's interesting. And maybe even in the counseling, that sometimes I think we go into the counseling and it hits the male in the relationship, especially like, you're a failure. This marriage is a failure. You've done something wrong. Instead of saying, you need to be my hero by help fighting for us.
Mm.
Yes.
Reframing it to say, like, do something. It's for me.
Yes.
Mhm.
And it's for us. I mean, it's for us. So going into counseling in that season helped because he was just as committed and feeling the same things I was feeling, just in different ways. And it helped to lead us out of that and to give us tangible things to work towards.
But
yeah, go ahead.
you can't do that though if the thing that helped us in that season too was we were both willing to look at our contribution
Yes.
to it. If you're not willing to do that, you're not ready. You're not ready yet. Like if it's still about, well, if she just didn't fill in the blank. Well, if he would just start fill in the blank, it's not going to be helpful.
And it never works. It doesn't matter where you are and what season of your marriage or relationship you are in. If you're pointing out to the other person what they need to do and not stepping back and seeing your space, again, that doesn't mean that there hasn't been true hurt
Absolutely.
and neglect, but there's two in a relationship.
And you got to take, it doesn't, of course, that doesn't delegitimize anything that they've done or haven't done. I'm just trying to say, if that's where your focus is, you're really not ready yet for healing because you're not in control of the other person. You have to take responsibility for you. And that's why it worked at that moment, because we were both saying, I'm willing to look at myself, not what you're doing. Because we had for a long time, if you would just stop nagging me, I would actually be more engaged. Well, if you would just be more engaged, I wouldn't have to nag. It's still the other person.
Yeah.
And you're not taking responsibility for anything so that's a very victim mindset. Like, if it wasn't for you, I'd be fine. I think counseling is for when you just feel lost. Sometimes when you feel lost, you just need some directions. And not every conflict you feel lost, not every season you feel lost, but in that season we felt kind of lost. Like, I don't know how to get to Orlando.
Yeah.
Like, like we know we want to get there, but you've mentioned a couple of like little trigger things. I mean, you mentioned patterns. Like, we keep coming back to the same thing. The intensity could be a sign. Like it just won't go away, or I'm feeling these things way bigger than I did 2 years ago. That could be a sign. Like, those are the kinds of things I'd pay attention to go and probably just like, I don't know. You said that, didn't you say that? Like you couldn't see a way out of it.
Right. I didn't know how to move past that. I didn't have the tools in my toolbox at that
Right.
point, probably to get me to that next point. It didn't
We
need
needed
that.
a map.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love your rephrasing of it. Counseling is not fixing what is broken; it's guiding what is lost.
Yeah.
Yes.
We just need some directions. So, but those would be the little trigger points. So no, not. I mean, we've had other seasons where we've fallen into patterns that are. But like for a short time, we haven't gone back to counselor for that. Partly because though we have the tools now, so some of that's just.
That's the other thing. I think a lot of men are like, I don't want to go to counseling because it's like, what, the next 6 years I'm going to be sitting on a leather couch, talking about how I screwed up this week. Sometimes it's 1 or 2 or 3 times, just giving the mechanisms to be able to be like, here's how you could talk a little better.
I think that's the best.
Yeah, I think so too, because I think I had to learn that because we were in a harder season, it didn't mean I needed to drag everything from our marriage into that where it was right then.
We used to do that a lot.
Yeah, I needed to focus on what was at hand. And that really did change for me the way that I navigated conflict, which helped. It did not feel so overwhelming to me, or that we needed to have it all figured out right now. To just trust that, okay, he's invested, I'm invested, and slowly, little by little, we will get to a space that feels more steady.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk about stress. Just natural stress in a marriage. I think there's a misconception that stress is a bad thing. You guys, have you had stress in your marriage? I mean, you've had kids and work and ministry and a growing ministry. And give me, and I don't want philosophical. I want, what's something that stressed you guys out? What was a season of stress? Tell me the story.
There's many to choose from, Chad. So we can start big and we can go little. So just coming at me hot right now. I could say about 5 years ago when we decided to move back from Harleysville, because he was a campus pastor there, to come back to Mannheim.
Okay.
And I was pregnant, about to have a baby. We had sold our house. We were getting into a new house. So moving, starting a new job. And those
basically the what do they say? Like the 3 biggest transitions or stressors in your life:
job change, and
children,
adding to your family.
Yes,
all 3 were happening within 3 weeks of each other.
So that
I wouldn't have planned it that way.
No. Well, I mean, Chad. I mean, again, I think I had pregnancy brain. I just thought I could handle this. I can do this.
We didn't just move once.
No, we were in 4 locations over 8 weeks.
We were in 4 locations
with a newborn. So
you should have told me. I would have gotten you guys a fruit basket
yeah.
or something. I mean,
thanks, Chad. Yeah, could we have stayed in your basement?
Yeah,
seriously.
I mean, something. Yeah, I think we just I don't know. We weren't thinking. I guess we didn't have a brain. We were going to Oz trying to find our brain. But that was. In the moment, I don't think we necessarily, it was stressful because I end up with postpartum depression. So that added to it. So that was not easy. That was its own side thing that was occurring on top of it, which, by the way, Lexapro in Jesus goes a long way. And so that did probably help set us up for a little bit of success in that season. But then throw in, we do all these moves. He has his new job or new role. And then we move into the house. And we had done pretty well, I would say, but it was starting to wear on us. I mean, my goodness, you have a newborn. You're trying to navigate our older 2 children back into a new space and then move. And I remember we were moving and we had all the technical things that are happening. Yep. It's July. It's hot. You're moving into your house. And we just started bickering. I don't know if you remember this.
I don't remember any of this.
Oh, yeah. We started bickering. It was like down below the deck, and we were clearing out one of the garages. And it just, kind of know when you've been married for a while where this is going, because then I started to become a little sassy, and then he's responding to the sass, and it's just not going well. And I will say, as stressful as that was, I feel like all the work we had done before that helped us to see it quicker. And so, no, it didn't get resolved that day, but I think the next day we called it out and we were able to take a moment and in the middle of everything else that was going on to talk about it, which is from years of work to be able to do that. Because in the past, when we've had stressful seasons, adding a second child, that was a hard season for us. And that just shows you we didn't have the tools. We went to counseling, we learned the tools. So then it helped us for the next season that was stressful.
So what's interesting about this, Jenny, is I think what you're showing is you are not the Facebook family. And I think that's so good and healing. Is there for you times where you're tempted to be the Facebook family, where you put the pictures up and everything's great and everything looks great and we're fine, and what do you do when you have those emotions where you feel like I don't want everyone to think that we're as messy as we are?
I think my 20 and 30-year-old self would have done that, wanted to present that, because I think especially in ministry, I mean, my dad was in ministry, his dad was in ministry, and there was this sense of you had to have this perfect presentation, and that carried over some into some of our ministry life, not as much as probably what I felt as a child. But yeah, you definitely want to present a certain way. It's not being authentic, though. I mean, I think there is a piece of it that I know isn't real or true or honest, nor should I let everything, everyone see everything either. Like there is a balance, I think.
There's some people that air out all their dirty laundry all the time, and that becomes their identity.
Exactly.
And then there's people that feel like they have to live up to, and I think even hearing you as a pastor's wife and a very visible presence at LCBC, there would be a temptation to want to make everything look like it's fine.
Yes.
And live up to that, persona.
Totally.
But I feel like you've always been much more, I feel like much more grounded, kind of in hype's never been your thing.
No, I don't think, I mean, I think some of that is because I didn't want to place that on. I had a little bit of the past, and how I was raised. I didn't want to place that on my family. So there is a gift from what I experienced. But I will say, I mean, my goodness, okay, take children to church, and why is it every Sunday morning they're going to act out before I'm headed to church? And I'm just like, and then I have to walk into this space where, oh my goodness, are they going to be screaming? Are they going to be yelling? And you feel that tension. Mm-hmm. You feel like, how are we showing up here? I want to show up well, but my kids, I was just breaking up a fight over here. I was wrestling a kid, trying to get his shoes on and his clothes on. And I mean, sometimes that feels, that feels a little overwhelming. And I think now what I've learned is, this helps when you have a surprise child so much later in life that, hey, if he doesn't show up in shoes, he doesn't show up in shoes. If we don't make it quite on time, that's okay too. I think they're just giving yourself grace and being soft with yourself is completely different in how I show up now in my 40s than I did my 20s and 30s.
Good for you.
I'm still learning, but trying.
Do you wish you had learned that in your 20s?
Oh my goodness, yes. And I know some moms that do that so well in their 20s. I just didn't have that at that moment.
No, I think we were all figuring it out.
I mean, we are, but that was a little harder for me. I think I wanted to wear that mask of perfectionism. I still do at times.
And I think that just so talking to young moms out there, young wives or fiancés, what would you say to them if they're feeling that tension to be like all the pictures on Instagram?
I would say rationally that is not true. That, social media is, whether it be a tangible social media or something more figurative, that is not reality. And I think that there's this internal pressure that we place on ourselves. I think there's a cultural pressure for women to put that on themselves as moms in a marriage, that we have to release and give ourselves space not to be that. And if everything isn't going to be perfect, that's okay, And that is, I wish I would have leaned more into that.
How has I think it'd be encouraging too, to just how has God in your relationship with Jesus freed you from some of that?
I think, obviously leaning into my quiet time with him every morning and being intentional with the space that I get with him and how he's spoken to me and how he has forgiven me, it gives me room to do the same for myself. And so because of that, I think I then can show up differently with how I parent, with how I engage with you and others. There's I think for many women, I think we have this internal, it's self-induced internal standard that God doesn't even hold us to. He doesn't hold us to that.
We're much harder on ourselves than God is.
Completely. You don't have to have a clean house. Your laundry may be piled up on your bed. That's okay. Your kids may be screaming in the grocery store. That's fine.
Could I wager a thought?
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps it's when you get your time with God, what you're actually doing is you're recognizing that you're living for an audience of one.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And it's not and suddenly it's not for all your high school friends, it's not for all of your, college friends, it's not for your neighbors. When we're living for the audience of one, and the one is not judgy.
Yes.
God is not judging you for having no shoes. He's judging for the heart of how you're treating your children and how you're trying your best and how you're seeking him. It's a whole lot easier to please the audience of one than it is to please the audience of 100.
Exactly, because you're not going to get it right with 100. They're going to have 100 different opinions. And I would say, too, while we're talking about social media, I know I have friends that have gone literally on social media who see all that, and sometimes it's fine and sometimes it really does affect them, even though they know cognitively that that's not the person's true life. And they've had to take a season to step off of social media. And I think that's such an insightful thing for them to do, because your own bandwidth, I guess.
Yeah.
So I think that can be a tool too to use. Literally
Totally.
just get off social media for a time.
Because that's not my husband, that's not my family,
Right.
that's not my house, that's not my
No,
story.
and neither is it theirs. I mean,
Yeah,
it is for that second, but not
Yeah.
how we're living it out.
Everyone else's highlight reel is on Instagram.
Exactly, completely.
So Jenny, you mentioned, like, when you had gone through postpartum depression, you had mentioned a time where, like you said, you got some medicine, you got some care. I think what you just highlighted there is you had to have some care that was for yourself. Jason wasn't able to give you some of that care, clearly. I think sometimes marriages, and I'd love for you guys to speak to this, is I think spouses, especially young spouses, assume that their significant other, their husband, their wife, will be the provider of all their care.
That will fulfill them.
Yeah, they're all the hope, all of the encouragement, all of the helping them with their baggage. Everything is going to come from that person.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Is
called
that reality?
codependence.
Oh,
I would say.
okay. Come
No,
on.
maybe we need to cut that.
No,
Wow,
no,
that was harsh.
No. No.
I would say from the work that I have been doing, that when I tend to look to him to fulfill things that aren't his, that means I'm being codependent with him.
Yeah.
That is,
And define codependent.
codependent is when you're relying on someone else to fulfill something in you that is not theirs to do.
Essentially, my happiness is when your happiness, your ability to be content and happy in life is wrapped up in someone else.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. It's from, what was the movie that you had quoted from Tom Cruise that says, "You complete me"?
Top Gun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
No, not Top Gun. Not Top Gun.
Cocktail.
Not Cocktail.
Days of Thunder.
Just throw it out. Just
I
okay.
couldn't-
Never
I
mind. Just cut
could
this.
not
Just
think-
cut this.
Fast enough. A funny Tom Cruise. I was racing.
Days of Thunder.
Cut that. Just cut that.
No, Jerry Maguire.
Yeah, Jerry Maguire.
Yeah.
Yeah, that concept of you complete me. Like, I mean, our spouses are not going to meet every single thing we do, nor should they. Jason is my best friend. I love being with him. I enjoy being with him. But there's a lot of things that he, and vice versa, he's not as into, or I'm not as into. So I have friendships. I have my own things that I do. And I think that that's a healthy space to be in, when you can find your identity outside of him or her. And at the head of it all, it's your identity in Christ. That's what matters the most. And I know sounds so like I've gone to Bible college, which I have, but it truly is. It truly does come through that, because then all the rest of my identity is filtered through that.
The more secure you are in who you are in Christ, the less I need others to affirm. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And my life seesaws. And I can tell sometimes the more I'm fishing for compliments, the more I'm depending on you for whatever. And usually that's a season where it's like, I've forgotten that what God said about me is, this is my dearly loved son in whom I'm well pleased. You know what I mean? Like, he's blessed me. I don't need to go find it. And I'm not saying I do that all the time. I'm saying that's usually, I can tell they're related. They're related to each other. So
Yeah, that's what you're working. Well, that's what we're working towards.
the other thing to think about is, what's the point of marriage? Now, depending on whether you're a follower of Jesus or not, will completely change your answer on this one. Like depending on if you're a Christian or not a Christian, you will have a very different answer to this. But if you were to ask most people, what is the point of marriage? My guess is the majority of people out there are going to say something related to happiness, be more fulfilled in life, it's going to come back to that idea. That is definitely not the Christian vision of marriage. Not that you won't be happy. I'm saying that that's not its intent and aim. It's not its highest aim. Ephesians says to husbands to work alongside, to present your wife holy and washed in the water of holiness. I don't have the verse in front of me, but essentially that I have a responsibility, that we have a responsibility to each other to move each other towards holiness, which is to become more and more shaped in the image of Christ. Now, how does that happen? That happens like sandpaper sometimes, refining the rough edges. This is the beauty of marriage, and it's the pain. But that's not it. Like, if the point is my holiness, that God can use her to make me more into the image of Christ. Now I have lessons of humility to learn. Now I have lessons of gentleness and compassion. And so now I don't see those conflicts as negative as much as I see them as refining.
Exactly. Because then, that's exactly what I was thinking. Because I can see more so now that when conflict happens, and because we've done the work of investing in ourselves and in each other, that when there's a sanding that's going down in my own heart and in my own spirit that goes along with our marriage, when you speak into it, I don't see it as much as critique or that you're against me. I see it as you want the best for me and we're on the same team, which feels very different.
I mean, honestly, if Jenny and I never got married, I'd probably have said, I'm sorry far fewer times in my life. I could orchestrate my whole life to essentially never be challenged.
Yeah.
But that's what marriage does. That's the beauty of it. And, I used an illustration once at church about, there's bridges that have collapsed and just in the country. And it wasn't until there was heavy equipment placed on those bridges until they collapsed. Now, here's the thing. There were fractures and cracks in that bridge all along, but it wasn't until the weight was applied that those became known. This is what marriage does. Now, I think this is a beautiful thing. This is actually, again, this is Ephesians. What Paul is, I think, trying to say is the beauty of marriage. Those cracks are still there, bro.
Yeah.
So stop blaming your marriage or your wife about it, or your husband about it. The cracks are, the weight of marriage is exposing them. Don't you want to know? Don't you want God to redeem that?
Yeah.
And so, I understand, and I'm not pretending like that's easy. Those have been the most painful things, but it's exposed that. And why should I expect, any different? I guess.
And on the other side of that is beauty, because then you become more connected. You become more deepened in your faith. I have a better understanding of how God has created me, created you, which is a real gift, I think, out of those tough spaces.
Yeah, because you have the opportunity in a marriage to put the gospel physically, literally on display for one another, which is, I know the worst about, this is the gospel, right? In Jesus Christ, he takes us and the worst things about us and still embraces us and loves us and offers forgiveness and grace. Like, who will know the worst about us more than our spouse, because they live with us? And then to have them offer themselves still to us in grace and love, and that's a really, really beautiful thing. But here's the thing. If you're not getting that from your spouse, you've gotten it from where you ultimately need it, which is Jesus.
That's good.
So your spouse is not your savior. And that's an impossible burden to put on them. And this is where usually when we're in our healthiest spots in our marriage, you might not say this, although maybe you have said this. You're like, I don't need you, but I want you, but I got Jesus. Like it sounds weird, but like those are usually the healthiest seasons for us, where you're not looking to me to fulfill something that only God can.
Yeah. And
now we're free to just relate to one another without the pressure of having to be each other's God.
Wow. So a lot of times young couples, they they hit conflicts they never expected that would be a conflict. So sometimes it's, family boundaries, in-laws, and sometimes it's even sex life. And that's something that no one prepares you for, because it's like, that shouldn't be a problem, right? So what advice would you give to young couples that are navigating new things like boundaries and sex life and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think with, we're talking about sex life, I think there are, you're engaged and and then you get married and you think there's going to be fireworks right away, and that doesn't necessarily all happen. And I know for us, are you okay if I talk more?
I have no clue
okay.
what you're going to say.
I guess we're going to see. Our first couple years of marriage with our sex life was very difficult. There was Jason's own story brought in trauma that I didn't.
Yeah, I had sexual abuse as part of my story from when I was younger.
Right, and we had done
done a ton of work, but
yes, and we had done premarital counseling, and we knew that there could be trip ups along the way. We definitely knew that, but each couple coming together, it's going to show up differently. And for us, it was a hard go when it came to our sex life, and that was a surprise to me because we were so connected.
And why was it a hard?
So going back to some of those past things, I think that we weren't talking about some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was feeling one way, you were feeling another.
That's great. That's good advice.
We didn't even talk about it. So instead of talking about it, we internalized it. And
making
assumptions. Yes.
Yep,
and so you create a story in your own head instead of getting that story out and verbalizing it to each other so that the other person can speak the truth into it.
Yeah.
So I think that was a piece of it. I think also, there's some things about your sex life that is spontaneous, and sometimes it needs to be
conversed about.
Yes, talked about and planned, or they say sex starts in the kitchen, so sometimes there needs to be the way that you're going to show up with each other outside of the bedroom.
I love that, and I'm so thankful for your vulnerability, because I think I would say 90% of the couples out there are taking their notes, they're clipping notes from Hollywood.
Yes.
They're taking notes for what a marriage sex life should be from Hollywood.
I'll tell you where they're taking notes from. It's pornography. They're taking their notes from pornography. And so which is obviously messing with the people's bedrooms in significant ways right now. But I want to come back to that, I guess. But I'll just say, so what happened for me was, because of what had happened in my past, I had a very, very difficult time connecting intimacy with anything sexually, I guess, or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and now you're married, and we wanted to honor God in the way we believe, and I believe that sex is so powerful and sacred that the only relationship powerful enough and strong enough to contain the power of sex is within the covenantal promise of a marriage relationship between a man and his wife. And so all that to say, we wanted to live by that. Now all of a sudden you're married and you're ready to go or whatever, but you've got this intimacy thing layered and vulnerability thing layered on top of it. And that's what freaked me out. What freaked me out was the vulnerability, because I didn't feel like I had agency or control over it, I guess, in a sense. That's what freaked me out. It was the feeling out of control thing.
And
so,
but you guys talked
eventually. But it wasn't. I can tell you where we talked. I mean, it was in that Fulton Street house. Right. I can tell you where we were, and I was just sitting on the floor. I think I was probably crying with you because I couldn't.
The burgundy carpet.
Yes. Yeah. It was like this disgusting burgundy carpet.
Well,
that's how we know.
Yeah, that's how you remember.
Yeah. But that was 2 years, 3 years in. Two years.
That was a couple years in.
Yeah, a couple years in. Which is sad because you're both kind of making up stories all along without really talking about it and all of that. But it's okay. Like, I mean, I didn't know how to talk about stuff like that either, and at least we did. And
or you wonder is this in my head? Am I making this
Jenny
up?
thinks I'm rejecting her with her.
Right.
It's in her head. So all that to say, we live in a world right now. I mean, sexuality has been obviously distorted and perverted in the most grotesque of ways in our culture.
Yeah.
So, and many people are bringing that in with them. I guess put that aside for a second. I would just say, look, once you get married, sex is the most vulnerable, power-packed, incredible, scary. I mean, like pretty much every adjective
I was
ever
going to say any
created
adjective you could throw
could
in
probably be put to it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes. So why wouldn't it take work? Why wouldn't it take some getting used to and all? I mean, like, so I would just tell couples if you're early married and all that, and it doesn't come down, that's all right.
Yeah.
Big deal. Like, cool. That's fine. It doesn't have to. Like, talk and
Yeah, keep talking, and you
Keep
have a
at it.
lifetime to figure it out too. Like
Yes.
it's not like it's just this is how it's gonna be for the rest of our lives.
I think even being vulnerable, planning.
Yeah.
I'm just
Yes.
going to say
Yes.
like that. No one tells you that it's like, because it's not romantic.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not on the beach. It's not, there's no fireworks. There's no throwing the stuff off the table,
Exactly.
yeah.
It's none of that kind of stuff. It's like, how about Wednesday?
Yeah.
That's not romantic. And
After Falcon Crest, are you good?
Exactly. And I think there's really damage in those expectations, especially for young couples, where it's like, you're not supposed to talk about it. It's supposed to be impromptu. It's supposed to always be romantic because that's what they've always seen. Or on the contrary, it's supposed to be very objectifying.
Yeah.
And neither of those is supposed to be true. And the only way you're going to get to the bottom of that is talking and actually saying what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And I think there's different phases of life too. I mean, when you have children, I mean,
Yep.
you're tired, you're exhausted, and the last thing you might want to do is that. And so I think sometimes having a vulnerable conversation as you get older, there could be, it could come with its own things, its own challenges. So it's not a once and done conversation. It's ongoing. And
Absolutely.
I think you're right. Sometimes there needs to be more intentionality around it. And then just allowing yourself to have grace and sometimes just take the pressure off. I mean,
so going to a different direction here, what other voices do you allow into your marriage?
What do you mean by that?
So I think some couples get advice, but advice can be a double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the wives out there that are getting advice from her mom.
oh, yes,
There's
I
some
see.
guys getting advice from his buddy.
Yep.
So there's advice that comes into the marriage. What advice do you, Jason and Jenny, allow into your marriage, and what voices do you trust into your marriage?
Mm-hmm. That's
Yeah,
good.
Yeah, you take that one.
Well, I would say let's stop for a second, kind of go back one step further, which is when you get married, your relationships do fundamentally change and should. Doesn't mean they go away, but they should change. Like, how could you are one flesh now with another person, right? You are one. So every choice you make has an effect and implications for another human being, right? Your spouse. So that's first and foremost. To pretend like you get married and things just kind of go on as normal isn't honoring the commitment and the opportunity, I think, that God's put in front of us to now live as one. So I think that's just fundamental. Jesus talks about and affirms what Genesis says about this is why God has set apart for man and woman for man to be united to his wife and to leave his father and mother. There's an aspect there and a principle of essentially leaving your old thing behind, your old life behind, and becoming a new family. Doesn't mean you cut them off. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the emotional attachment, the emotional priority goes to your spouse now, not anybody else. So I'll tell you what that meant for us. I remember in our first year of marriage, we have one of our principles is or one of the principles I live by, I'm never going to talk to someone about something about Jenny that I haven't already talked to Jenny about.
Good.
I'm never going to do that. So I've got a couple of friends that I'll talk to about our marriage. I think that's important. They're godly men. I trust. And here's two things. So who would I talk to? Godly men, because I know at the end of the day, the standard that they're going to point me towards is Jesus. And second, they've challenged me in the past. And what I mean by that is it's so easy in a marriage to go and rally people to your side about your spouse. And I need people who will challenge my perspective from an objective standpoint. And so I've got a couple people who will do that, but I'm still not going to talk to them about anything that I haven't talked to Jenny about. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's fair to Jenny. And I just don't think that's right. What you don't want to do, again, in a marriage, you want to live more as one. And anytime you're creating separate things, like having separate conversations about this, I would never talk to a woman about my marriage. I think that's stupid. I think it's foolish. I think it's a fast track because you're opening up intimacy with someone else who's not your wife, right? So if you're a guy, and again, I'm kind of assuming you want to do life the Jesus way. So if you don't, I have no authority, whatever, do whatever you want. If you do want to do it the Jesus way, I don't see how you can do that. That's not even, by the way, honoring to your wife. That's not honoring your spouse.
Totally agreed.
So you need to stop that.
Good.
I mean, if you were sitting down with me and you were telling me, I'd be like, you're an idiot. Like, stop doing that. You're on the fast track right there. And by the way, well, anyways, so what would you say? What would you add to that? Those would be some boundaries, I think. Oh, I was going to tell that story about when we were first married.
Oh,
when the first year of marriage.
Yes.
Something I don't even know.
Again,
what
it was a harder.
It was a real hard year.
for
I wasn't
us.
even sleeping.
Yes,
Like I was sleeping on the couch.
Yeah, at times, yes.
I mean, like,
Wow.
yeah, that's hard, man. It's like, what did we do? What did I do? I don't know, because you don't know how to be married. I don't know how to be a husband. So, anyways, all that to say, I remember one time something. I don't actually remember this, but Jenny brought this up, and I called my sister. I'm real close with my family, and I called my sister, and I was telling her about something. Was it something?
I can't even remember, but it was something that I do know you should have talked to me about.
Yeah,
and
I should have talked to Jenny.
Address it. You had told me that, and then I came back to you later and said, that was something that you should have come to me first.
Yeah.
We are married now, and this is a conversation that we should have had.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't even malicious on my part.
Not at all.
It was
just,
oh, things have changed.
Yes.
And I can't keep going because it just probably was like, hey, we're thinking about buying this. What do you think? I don't
Totally.
Even
And I think that's important for every young guy to hear because especially in our culture today, guys have as many female friends as they do male friends.
Mm-hmm.
It's very different. It used to be always like, well, you have your group of buddies. I remember when I was about to get married, I had a female friend, and we hadn't even been married yet, and Steph was like, that's over.
Yeah.
Like she was like, that's over, buddy.
Yes.
The divorce rates say that a lot of people are getting it wrong.
Yeah.
So it's best when it comes to marriage, it's best to
I'd follow Jesus
protection. Yeah,
exactly. I would follow Jesus's wisdom on this one when he said, "For this reason, a man will leave and become united with his wife." Leave what? Leave your whatever it was. You got a new life now. You got a new thing. Well, do I just drop everybody? Well, no, I'm not saying that. You don't have to be mean. You don't have to be a jerk. It changes though. And if you act like it doesn't, you're missing the point.
Here's the other thing. Any friend that you're holding on to that has a problem with it,
they don't get it either.
You don't need to be friends right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they need to want to be godly and they need to want the best for your marriage as well. And they need to recognize that.
Yeah, they will bless you in that. They will say, absolutely, I do not expect you to be over my house for wings every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night anymore.
I was just going to say, too, I think that you need... we have found this to be true. I'm very careful about who I talk with about my marriage. There's very few people that I would talk to about it. It's more of being authentic is one thing with what we're doing here now.
This is authentic.
But then there is a vulnerability that I'm only going to have for a very select few.
Good for you.
And that's just
and
something
how do you
we've
determine? I told you kind of filters for me who that would be, but what about you?
I think some of the same things, like what is a relationship with Christ like? If they are married, what does that look like for them? What is their own marriage? How are they showing up in that? That probably speaks volumes to me. And I think it's time, these people I do share with, I've known them for years and years and years. So it's not just someone new that I'm sharing with.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
What are some marriage felonies for you guys?
I think absolute statements. Saying
What's that mean?
always, he never, She always does this.
Tell
She
them
never does
about me and
that.
you were talking about some of this whole podcast, by the way, just kind of came out. Jenny and I so often will be, maybe not so often, but multiple times we've kind of been in the car talking about marriage or and every time I'm like, we should just talk about this. Like, this would be good for everybody to just kind of hear. So anyway, some of that was this, but we were talking about the other day, about my shoes or clothes, leaving it out. And you were saying like, that's the moment where you can start. What do you start saying in the absolute statements?
Yeah, like absolute statements. So
talk about that real quick.
Yeah. So, I can at times notice that he keeps things out, and I'm constantly
he keeps things out.
putting things away.
What
would that be?
And sometimes,
just say it.
Okay.
By our bed, my shoes.
Yes.
What are they?
Clothes. And a lot of times it does
Children.
not. It just,
so out of curiosity, like many people, and I'm not going to say me, but
Of course,
definitely
not
like
you.
me, we sometimes get ready for bed and just assume that like, house elves come.
yeah, exactly. That there's a vacuum.
Scamper
Yes.
and pick everything up.
Exactly. You have house fairies that do all this. So, and sometimes it's fine. I don't mind doing it. And other times, in my head, I start to say, I get grumbly, or I can go to, well, he never cleans up his shoes in my head. And that is usually a gut check for me that, oh, wait a minute, what storyline am I going with? I'm not being very generous right now. Instead of, there have been times where I haven't got to that point, but I do need to come to him when I'm in a good space and say, hey, do you mind just please being mindful of putting those clothes in the laundry? And he does, and he respects me. And that's a completely different way of showing up. And then there's been times where it has gotten to me to the point where I have been grumbly in my head, and I've just been a nag about it. And no one wants to hear that. No one wants to be nagged. I'm not his mother. I shouldn't show up that way for him. He has a mother. He doesn't need another mother.
And I want to clarify that the felony for you guys is not the picking up of the clothes.
No, it's not that at all.
It is the
nevers.
It is when I'm assigning that my husband always.
Never.
It's your spirit.
It's binding him to he's unchangeable.
Exactly.
Those absolute statements. That's right.
Yeah.
I think another one is historical. We try. We try not to get historical. We try our best. I'm not sure.
What do you mean by that?
Bringing up the past.
Yep.
Yeah. Bringing like we try our best to, if we've dealt with something that's done now, and not bring it back up.
Jason's really good at that. I still have a lot of work to do in that area. But you do really well with that and leading us and not bringing up the past.
I think felonies, eye rolling and contempt.
Yes.
We try to be very mindful of that. Sighing. I don't know if sarcasm would be a felony for us. I don't know if we've ever defined it like that, but we don't do that a ton. I think sarcasm is kind of a dangerous road to go down as a couple. Yeah. Because usually there's a bite to it and a sting to sarcasm. And just gotta be careful. Yeah. There's a lot of proverbs that talk about the foolishness sometimes of saying things and then just passing it off as jokes.
Yeah.
And because usually there's a little bit of more bite than you think.
A felony for Steph and I is we don't compare.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
There's no comparison. So one felony is like, we don't go like, well, he, well, she.
Yeah.
Like
other couples?
Yeah,
or
other couples. I'll never say like, well, so-and-so's wife, like that's a felony. No. Like there's.
You want to get a husband up on his heels.
Or even with children. Yeah. Well, I did this, so I need you to do that. Like, I mean,
that's
another keeping score.
Scorekeeping, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's kind of the same kind of other side of the coin, but yeah, scorekeeping.
The other felony is the kids never get to speak into our fights or disagreements.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, we like nothing will unite us faster than when we're having a disagreement and we hear a little voice in the back of the car and we're like, it's like the Eye of Sauron goes to the back seat and we're like, what?
Those poor kids, that probably shuts them down real quick.
It does, because they think that there's two things. We're teaching them that mom and dad, we are a united front always.
Yes.
Yeah. And the second thing is it's helping them understand that this marriage is ours.
Yep.
The family is all of ours, but the marriage is just Steph and I's. And the kids don't get to speak into that. And so when we're having a disagreement, they're not invited in. And so we shut that down, and that's another felony. Because I do think that sometimes marriages side take.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, all the family's over here and dad's over here. And it's like, that's really unhealthy.
Yeah, you're triangulating in that situation, which isn't good.
What I actually like about what you're saying, Chad, is I don't mind arguing in front of the kids.
Sure.
There's a line, and you got to be arguing fairly and fighting fair and fighting right. I actually think there can be, sometimes the reason people don't know how to have healthy conflict, they never saw it.
Yeah.
They just never saw it modeled. And they saw I'm very unhealthy. So that's not what I'm talking about. But there's something about even sometimes when it's not done right and then them hearing you apologize to your spouse, like it's all kind of you're always teaching and modeling. And so I don't know, we're not big. I mean, I guess you gotta be careful with this, but I mean, like we'll talk about stuff out in the open. I mean,
yeah, there's things we do, and we've definitely done it in really unhealthy ways too.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
we've learned from, that
like
we've had to learn
lines.
from. But if we know that it's a safe space to have that conversation, there are times we've done that.
Our kids just need us to. I've said this before. Like they don't need you to be perfect. They don't need you to have a perfect marriage. They need to see Jesus at the center of your marriage, and that's all. And when all that means is, I've tell our kids this a lot. I'll be like, your mom and me are not perfect. Your mom's never certainly claimed to be, but she'll say sorry. She'll own it. That's the lesson she's teaching them. That's the modeling,
Yeah.
So, and they don't even really need perfection. They need the other stuff.
How do you guys handle disagreements with child raising?
We don't have a ton. I mean,
I'm trying to think. I don't think that there's been, it probably depends on the phase of your child.
Sure.
Definitely how you show up for that. But I think as far as disagreements, I don't think there has been.
It's more in our approach sometimes.
Yes,
like where I feel like they just need grace. And she feels like, no, they need the hammer, or vice versa. I feel like they need the hammer. She feels like that's usually where.
But I'm hearing what you're doing. So I'm going to help you guys figure out where you are. You're talking about it without the kids. Like you're talking about it ahead of time or behind the scenes.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
So you are doing something. You're
right.
When you have disagreements, you're discussing them and then going back to the kids. That's what I hear you guys saying.
Right. We're not going to have those discussions obviously in front of the kids, and we're not going to usurp one another. Whatever the other one has said, whether we agree or disagree. Right. I mean, we're not going to say that until later. Usually,
Yeah,
that's usually
very rare.
Yeah, that would be very rare that we would do that. We try not to do that in front of the kids. I think, there are definitely little things, but not a pattern, I don't think, that is occurring or that has occurred for us. I think it just depends on the phase of life and what you're trying to figure out at the time. Sometimes you're figuring it out at the same time. And because of that, it can create more of a discussion. But I wouldn't say that we usually land at the same place. It's just more of usually a discussion that's occurring. But we usually come to the same place. But I can definitely I would say I'm probably more, it's funny. I mean, with your kids, I don't know if you've noticed, like there's certain things that I'm like, even Sienna knows, our oldest, who's 18, she knows that there's probably certain things she can not talk me into, but I am very much more grace-based on certain things. And other things, I am like, she loves animals, and I am like, no more animals. Like we have one dog, and that is it. She knows she cannot talk me out of that.
It is kind of weird. Like
where you have other things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
like Jenny's way more, rigid about like media, let's say, or something like that. And I'm like, Saving Private Ryan, let's watch it. He's 8.
No,
but I'm
you have
good
not done 8 with that.
No. But I mean, like, I'm okay with
yes.
that because it's like, she's like, it's so violent. I'm like, yeah, but it's historical. Well, then I'm very rigid on like, something else. And she's way more permissive. It is funny.
So you each have chances to come to each other in the middle.
Yes.
And admit that, like, I think something that's important in every marriage is in those discussions, each of you gets to win sometimes.
Exactly. That's a good way of putting it, because there's certain things that he's seeing that I'm not, and I have to release that, especially as a man. He views certain things through a different lens than I do. And same thing, he has to trust me as a woman that I might see that a little bit different.
Yeah.
And respecting that.
I do think that sometimes there's this understanding that the wife is the wise sage of the raising of the kids. And often, mothers take such a huge brunt of the raising of the kids. But there's something so valuable and important of the husband having a voice.
Completely. And I think a big voice in ours is, so when our kids get sick, I'm very wait and see kind of personality. And I need this guy in it big time to speak, because there will be times like when Solomon broke his leg, I was like, well, let's just give it time. Let's just wait and see. And he's like, oh no, I think we need to take it in. So that's where I have to lean towards him when it comes to like anything.
My leg's hanging off.
Exactly. Yes. So that's happened a lot of times, not a lot, but quite a few times where I have to allow him to be the wise one in that.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received in your marriage?
I've heard a lot. I think we've received a lot. I think there's a few that have stuck with me. I think one being that we're on the same team, that no matter what, that we're working towards the same goal. And sometimes we say that to each other. We are on the same team, and that has stuck with me. It can sometimes seem like we're not, but at the end of the day, we want the best for each other and for our family. What would you say?
Oh man. Best advice. Well, I heard Lewis Smedes, or read Lewis Smedes say this one time. He's like,
Wait, who's that?
He's an author, and he said, you marry 5 different people over the course of a marriage. They all just happen to live in the same body. People change. If you're the same that you were if you're today at the age that you are, which I won't say.
I don't mind claiming it. I'm 43.
If you're the same at 43 as you were at 22, like something is broken. Like that's not good. So my point is, people change. That's the beauty of the commitment of marriage. The thing that ties you together is not the people. The thing is the commitment. And I don't know. That was just always very encouraging to me to think. That's the safety that comes from a committed marriage. Is the one thing, I will not be the same 20 years from now as I am today, but the one thing that will be the same is I'll have Jenny. Like her commitment. That's the safety that it creates. That's why marriage is a beautiful.
That's awesome.
Thing.
We've definitely taken a look at some of the how to navigate the hike. Oh
yeah.
But there's the view. So we talked all about how to climb the mountain of marriage, but there's some rewarding views and there's some rewarding beauty and there's some amazing things that make it all worth it.
I would say that, just some of the rewarding things is, things that we're kind of intentional about is getting time together. I can truly say this from the bottom of my heart. My most favorite person to be with is Jason, and I'm not just making that up. He's just,
I don't blame you.
Guys, he is so humble. He is so humble. Anytime I get with him, I just can't get enough of him. And so I think some of those things that we do that are intentional and that are rewarding for us is we have Friday morning dates. We try to protect that. And that has always been really special because it's just the two of us. I think anytime that we can just discuss what God is showing in each other's chair time, that is really special because there's so much that I learn from him and what God's showing him. And I am so grateful for those things that I can share that God has been sparking in me. And he has a way to also connect dots that I don't always see in those things that God's showing me. So that's some of the rewarding things. We don't sword fight anymore, so that's, no, I'm just kidding. Just bring that back. Yeah, like we did in college. But yeah, what about you?
I mean, I definitely echo so much what you're saying. I feel like you said connecting the dots. I don't know anybody as wise as you. You help make sense of so much. I think you're obviously, from a companionship standpoint, there's so often where I'm conflicted or I don't know totally what to do. And you just have a way of cutting through and helping make sense of things. I think the most rewarding is, I've told you this before. No one has shown me Jesus, put flesh on Jesus more than you. That's the bottom line. no one has made the gospel as clear to me as you have, because you've seen me at my worst and you keep coming back with grace and love. That's healing. You've healed. I mean, like there's a healing work that's happened because of you in my life. So my heart has been renewed in those ways. So, yeah, I mean, the fun stuff and all that, and just the companionship and the friend. I mean, like, there's just so many inside jokes. That's also part of the marriage. You know, that's part of it. And you should embrace those things.
That's awesome.
And being goofy together. I think we're pretty goofy people. And so the freedom to do that. Like,
you
my goodness,
that.
you totally need that. If we didn't have that, I mean, yeah, you can laugh at fart jokes together and all kinds of things. Yeah. So
absolutely. And
oh, man, I know when Jenny is there. Every now and then, my phone just will blow up with Instagram reels that I'm getting sent.
Guys, I sometimes I need them. Like, I don't need it all the time, but sometimes I just need to zone out for a minute and just like, I need funny reels that are just gonna, Chad's belly laughing. Like, that's me. Like, I've got a belly laugh.
I absolutely.
You get it?
I totally get it.
Yeah.
Steph and I speak in memes,
Yes.
or memes and GIFs.
Totally.
Like,
Yes.
Totally.
Yes.
Like, I just sent and we're teaching our children that, because I sent my daughter the gingerbread GIF from Shrek, where it was like, do you know the gingerbread man? I just sent that to her.
Did she get it?
I'm waiting for her response, because I think she'll reply back, the gingerbread man. The last question is, you've been married for 22 years. What are your dreams and hopes for the next 22? Where do you hope to see yourselves?
Oh, man.
And how are you going to get there?
Where my head goes is a different kind of, my head goes to this next 22 years is going to bring grandkids, and it's going to bring a different kind of chapter for us. While we have grandkids, we also have an elementary school age
I'll
kid.
be grandparent and a parent of an elementary
I just
school
realized
child.
that. Yeah. Solomon's going to be an uncle at 6.
You guys do understand the mechanics of everything.
Yeah.
Right?
God.
This
In
wasn't,
case you don't know, we have a 5-year-old in our home
And
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 a
an 18-year-old. So, anyways, I think that has me thinking more about. It has me thinking more about our marriage in legacy terms, for lack of a better word.
oh
It's just kind of weird stage. Like, my kids are growing up; they're getting older. One's leaving, kind of going into adulthood this year, and so it just has me thinking, man, these next 5-6 years for us, they're just different. They're gonna begin to change in the way that we relate to our own children. You were talking about marriage, I guess. I mean, so that's more family stuff. It's hard to separate your marriage in some ways. Just family unit at some point. As far as our marriage goes, I would say my hopes and dreams for the next 20 years are to know Jenny more deeply, to be known by Jenny more deeply, and to pursue God's calling on our life as a couple in new ways.
that's awesome.
To leverage what we have been given, our experience, our stories, and our strengths in new ways in the next years.
I can't help but think with what you said, that we marry 5 to 7 different people, that, the next 22 years, that 2 more Jennies and 3 more, Jasons will be at this table. That's 22 really years from now. Yeah. So and what will that be, and how will we be shaped and growing? And a lot of that is also in marriage. It's an investment in yourself too. And I don't mean that in a selfish way. I mean that I'm investing myself in Christ. And as I do that, then I'm able to shed those skins. And with that comes exciting new things that we could pursue that we don't even know about. I mean, I know for me, I'd never done embroidery until 4 years ago. I had never done yoga until 8 years ago. So just think what could happen in the next 22 years.
That's awesome.
And then from even you saying our marriage and thinking about how do you can't really separate that from our children right now. But I do want to set up a space with our marriage that once the kids are gone, which will be longer because we have Solomon, but that we aren't just strangers, that we aren't just roommates, and making memories and showing the commitment that we've had with our other 2, that continues for Solomon as well. Yeah. Going along with what you were saying, that he continues to see the benefit of that we just don't kind of slack off. So
because it'd be easy.
It would be.
Yeah,
22 years. I mean, think about what we've been through, but all that we've acquired in these 22 years, just think about the foundation we've made for the next 22.
Yeah.
That's exciting to me.
I hope that fifth Jason is not a cantankerous old man.
Wait, doesn't become cantankerous.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank
you
you,
so much.
Chad.
I think that more marriages need to be vulnerable enough to share, because that's what the church is.
Mm-hmm.
The church is about learning from each other. It's about learning from couples that are a little bit further down the tracks, and realizing that it's not always perfect, but it's always good. Like it's good. It's good. It's fighting the good fight, and it's also so rewarding in the long run. And I think just your willingness to give us some advice and share some of the things that you've learned and are still growing in, and even just the peace that I have knowing that, hey, if the Mitchells haven't figured it out, that's okay that I haven't figured it out, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So thank you guys. Jenny, don't be a stranger on the podcast. We'd love to have you back.
This is so fun. I would love to come back.
I will say the first thing she asked was, "Where's Joanna?" And I'm like, of course.
I mean, I love Chad, but I need Joanna here
course.
too. Yeah, I have to come back when she.
We all want to see Joanna, you know. So thank you everyone for tuning in to the Live Change podcast. I just want to remind you that marriage is work, but it's worth it. It's work that is worth it. So if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you like, share, subscribe, and leave comments. And as always, now that you're life changed by Christ, live that change out.